just recorded my wrap-up, so I thought I'd come and have a bit of a chat with you. Hi everyone, my name is Charlie, and today I'm going to be talking about nothing in particular. I considered making this video in the car park at work yesterday, but I arrived a bit later than usual. Indeed, the last 2 days I arrived later than usual, due to the fact that I did not know whether I was going to be in work. Because for whatever reason, I woke up on Thursday feeling rather unwell. Now I've said I've done several of those tests to determine whether it is COVID, and it hasn't been. I think that it's just been this general feeling of stress, maybe, I don't know. I have yet to figure out how my body works, because there seemed to have been nothing to have triggered my body to react in such a manner, but it decided, you know what, we're going to leave you feeling particularly fragile, and that's rather difficult, I think, to accept at my age. That, yeah, I couldn't cope with loud noises. If I've talked about it before, sometimes I have like these languid, lackadaisical days, and I just need it to be rather quiet. But I couldn't do that because I had work on Friday. So on Thursday when I woke up with this, I was like, right, how are we going to fix this? At first I went with my father's old-fashioned thing and decided to try fresh air. So Sally and I went off to Macclesfield Forest. That didn't work. If anything, it made me feel worse. So then when I came home, I thought, you know what, we'll try a bath. Well, that didn't work either. I just thought, well, we'll leave this day as it is. We'll cope with this all-body migraine, or whatever we want to call it. And we'll consider ringing doctors again, but we don't do it. We just moan to our friends and siblings. Friday comes round, go to work, caffeinate myself and give myself a few painkillers to get through the day. Probably not recommended, but what can you do? And then Saturday did the same, but leaving it so late before I made a decision as to whether I'd be in work. Well, actually, I have to tell my manager an hour before I'm in work. I couldn't really justify not being there, so it's been fine. Indeed, yesterday we ended up having a rather busy afternoon indeed, which having talked to you about the fact that we were having fewer customers, it was rather nice that it got so busy in the afternoon and that we managed to hit our target. I don't know what it was. I don't know whether people were getting ready for the bank holiday weekend, so they were going to be out partying, but we had a few groups of people come in and they were just raiding the rails, bric-a-brac, books, you name it, they were having it. On Wednesday, someone had donated his entire CD collection, and the CDs had no cases. We donated them in those folders, so we said we'd do 20p each or fill one of these cases for £10. And so we had quite a few people going through and doing that, and we made the most that we've made on the CDs and DVDs in a while, which is fun because we've been questioning actually stopping accepting them, because it just seems that nobody is buying them anymore. You have a few people who want to collect CDs, but they have to be really obscure ones, and people want DVDs, but they want stuff that's either they only want recent stuff or from many years ago. Anything popular doesn't sell. I had Marvel films, Disney films, you name it, things that used to sell like that, not going. Even certain DVDs about a magical 11-year-old. Nope, not selling. And there are 8 in that series, so when we get those in, nope, not selling. They just languish and linger on the shelves. And I don't know why. I've thought about blaming streaming services, but even that doesn't make sense sometimes. Although it's like glass, really. About, when did I start? It's nearly 9 years since I got properly employed, so 10 years ago it'll be. There was apparently a huge thing on getting blue glass. And this was what a dealer told us at the time, because he used to come and help us. And blue glass you could sell as fast as anything. And then the following year, it changed. People wanted a different colour, or they weren't interested in that glass anymore. And it's just a fad over what sort of antiques and what sorts of knickknacks people want. And maybe it talks, you know, there's something in the whole Marie Kondo habit of just accumulating stuff that's completely useless. I don't know. I don't particularly care for dust collectors. I have this Lilo and Stitch snow globe that my sister bought me that desperately needs washing. I have this guy out of Mulan because, well, let's not get into why my friends think I'm a villain. And this was my dead grandmother's, which I was given simply because I have a degree. Otherwise, I don't particularly care for that sort of thing. So when people are buying knickknacks and bric-a-brac, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. But as long as they're doing it, they probably don't understand why I have hundreds of books on my shelves. Well, humans are weird. So anyway, that was work this week. Colleague is off because not supposedly, colleague off having tested positive for COVID. Same colleague also had fall, possibly broken wrist. They're on holiday this week anyway, and so I wasn't due to see them for a fortnight, so we'll see how stuff goes. Also, I find it difficult to get the wherewithal to read when I've been in work. So usually, those days that I'm in work, I tend not to read and just watch YouTube. I just don't have the energy to read. But with being ill as well last week, I'm just like, ugh. I don't have the energy to read on those days either. So the fact that I managed to finish The Paper Palace to discuss it in my wrap-up was thrilling indeed. I mentioned this to talk about the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. So I talked about doing a reaction video, but I was in work. I got into work on Wednesday and went straight to the computer and switched YouTube on. And I was there refreshing it, chatting to Charlie. The night before, no, Monday we'd done our actual predictions, or was it Tuesday? Tuesday we did predictions, and so what we'd done was I ranked all 16 titles from favourite to least favourite, including my predicted marks for the ones I hadn't read. I've got 3 left, and Charlie did the same on her side. And then we added those scores together and came up with a top 6. And I am very proud to say that our Charlie scientific method managed to find 5 out of the 6 on the long list. And that is simply because we both believe that Paper Palace should be on that long list, that short list, over Sorrow and Bliss. I don't know how betting works, but maybe we should do the same thing with the shortlist and put a bet on. I don't know. The Charlie scientific method definitely worked for us in coming up with the shortlist. I've got Great Circle and The Bread the Devil Need to read this month. Because Salt Lake didn't make it through to the shortlist, I'm just going to read that in my own time whenever now. Because there are tons of books I actually want to read. I still got books to read for the BookTube Prize, one of which I'm starting today. But this month I really wanted to read Streets of Laredo by Larry McMurtry. I bought all of McMurtry's Lonesome Dove books last year, or the year before now, with the hopes of getting them read, and I talk about it all the time. I purchased them all and then he died 2 days later. So yeah, never become a favourite author of mine because it's probably not good for you. And I really want to get back to reading some McMurtry and also reading some of the authors that I actually also like. But I mean, I've not disliked reading the Women's Prize books with Charlie, and I have snuck in other titles here and there. Had I been reading them all straight through, I'd probably have finished all of them by now. But there are also books over here that I want to read. I acquired quite a few books from a charity shop last month when someone donated tons of Agatha Christie. I just saved 4 E.F. Benson books from the bin. I'm constantly adding books to these shelves, but I am not reading them, which is not a good thing. And I saw Doris, of all the books, who I have not watched in too long. This keeps happening as well because I'm running out of time, apparently. This is what happens when you decide to finish writing a novel. Everything else falls to the wayside. And Doris did this try a chapter thing where if she wasn't liking it, she was unhauling it, and I thought this is a great thing to do. But the problem is I can be really strict and decide that I hate a book for the smallest of reasons, just to throw it out. That's why all of the books that I put in an unhaul bag are still here, because when I take them into the shop, I want to actually go through them, examine them again, and see whether I do still want to read them. Otherwise, I think I talked about my writing when I spoke to you the other day, and I talked about that poem I was writing, the short story I was doing. Really need to get into writing this next novel. I need it to happen. I don't have the restlessness of not writing yet, but I feel like I've achieved something when I write, and when I'm not writing, I feel like, well, what could I be doing with this time? There's also tons of films still that I want to be watching, and I've not watched any of them. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe that's what I should start scheduling writing time during the year, and then the time I'll take off to actually do all the things that I need to get done. Has anything else happened this week? No, it has not. No, it really hasn't. Oh my goodness, I lead a very boring life. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I lead such a boring life, but I do. Incredibly mundane and prosaic. Yeah, I don't know. We've got to remember that I am a perpetual common spinster over here, so just lingering in my bedroom, fawning over fauna and reading books is probably all I have to do with life. Is there anything else? Anything else at all? Anything that happened in the world that I could talk about? I don't know. Quite honestly, when we got to Saturday, I was surprised we got to Saturday again, because I was like, well, that happened fast. And, you know, I know that this is just going to continue to happen as I continue to treat every day and as the same and not do anything different. That's going to happen. It's just the way of the world at the moment. Oh, my mother had a birthday. So yeah, Wednesday, that was stressful. I don't actually know whether I told you about Wednesday. I know I mentioned I was in work and they announced the Women's Prize shortlist, and how I'd originally planned to be at home watching that and then do this reaction to it. But it was also my mother's birthday, and we closed the shop, and I set about adding up all the cash. My volunteers had gone, and whilst I am adding up the cash, nothing's making sense. And I discovered that at lunchtime, my volunteer had accidentally reset the till. So we usually do an X-read at lunchtime, check how much it's doing, and if any mistakes have been made, we can sort it then. But it doesn't reset the till. So the till had been reset twice in one day. So I had to go through the bin to find the readings from lunchtime, to then add them all together to send off to my head office. I also had a ton of paperwork to get sorted before I left. And so I left the shop at 5:15. I have to go to the supermarket across the road because my dad's asked me to get my mum's birthday present from him because he's lambing at the moment and he doesn't want to go into a supermarket filthy. So I get her flowers, I get the cards, I go and I pay. Get back to my car, no car keys. I'm thinking, have I just locked them in my car because I've thrown my coat in because it had warmed up since the morning? I think, well, I'll just retrace my steps. So I go back to the supermarket, wander all around the supermarket where I wandered, go back to the till where I was, and I look, did I drop them underneath the baskets? And I'm walking away and the cashier shouts to me, did you lose your keys? Yes. They're on the front desk. So then I have to go and wait at the front desk. Do that. Get me keys back. Fine. We're cooking with gas. No. Because I hit more traffic at that moment than I have seen in years. And I'm thinking, I have an Italian conversation booked for 6:30 with una signora. I have to give me mother a card, give me mother a gift, and all that. Well, I was cutting it fine, but we got the Italian conversation going eventually. And then, from the Italian conversation, Italian signora gets a phone call while she's on the phone to me. We were about to finish, and the phone has been cutting out the entire time. We start the conversation, so she starts the conversation, my phone cuts out, so she rings me back thinking that I've hung up on her. So then I have to explain I hadn't, the phone had cut out. So I also have managed to mildly offend the Italian lady before waking up the next day, as I say, just feeling drained. And that has stuck with me for the last 3 days. It stuck with me so much that I've not been able to listen to music because nothing has been quiet enough for me. Reading wise, if it's been fast, I've not been able to do it. So I went back to Rachel Cusk with Arlington Park because I knew it was on Borrow Box. And so I just read the first chapter or so of that, because I was like, well, at least it's slow and I know that it's meandering and I can deal with that. I tell you, it's weird being in this body. I'm not sure who chose it. But yeah, that was probably the only day that anything dramatic happened, and the most dramatic thing was getting stuck in traffic having lost my keys. I mean, it's not even as bad as some of the problems. Well, it's not, you know, none of them are really problems, are they? That's the thing. None of them are problems, they're just inconveniences that happen during the day. That's the thing. Did it ruin my day? No. Was it just a case of sod's law? Yeah. And that's it. You just move on. Because I bored you for long enough, and quite honestly I want to put a pot of coffee on, so I'm going to go do that. I still haven't decided whether I'm joining my mother to go out for lunch with my grandmother. We'll figure that out as we go. Quite honestly, I'd prefer just to have a day at home doing note, but that's how I want to spend my entire life, really, isn't it? So what are you up to? What are you reading? What are you writing? What are you watching? What are you listening to? Have you had some good news this week? Bad news? Let me know. Because, well, I'm here. I hope that you got something out of this video, even if it was sheer boredom or just something to watch whilst you blew your nose. And until next time, that is all.